Let's just jump right into it. All right. Are you all ready for a celebration? I hope so, because we are celebrating on Wednesday. Quick housekeeping items. So all the attendance all the attendance grades are up to date. The homework, this past homework has been graded. So every homework assignment up until now is graded, and all the attendance is up to date. And it invariably gets asked, wait, how much is the exam worth and whatnot? So this is the grade breakdown for the class. So the attendance is 5%, the homework's 35%, and then each exam's worth 20%. The exams, I'll tell you, are not comprehensive. I'll go ahead and answer that right now. So exam 2 is not intended to test you on what you did on exam 1 and the new stuff, but sometimes there are some things that bleed over. For example, when we come back on Friday after the exam to discuss truss deflections, well, you can't do truss deflections. You can't compute the deflections in a truss without analyzing a truss. And so some of the material bleeds over. It's just sort of the nature of the course. But my intention is not to generate comprehensive exams. So, and that'll become a bit clearer once we start delving into the exam 2 stuff. But let's keep our focus on exam 1 today. There have been some periodic questions over the past week or so about the logistics. And so first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the logistics on the exam, and I want to just make sure that everybody is 100% crystal clear on how the exam is going to be conducted. So let's start off talking about the scheduling, the operation, the approved material, all that stuff. Let's just handle all that now. So first off, let's talk about the schedule. The exam is going to be delivered on Blackboard, okay? It's going to open at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, October 7th, and it is going to close at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, October 7th. So the exam, now I want to be clear, the exam is designed to be 50 minutes long. I'm giving you an hour chunk on the timed exam part on Blackboard, but it's designed to be 50 minutes long. And when I say designed to be 50 minutes long, the first thing I want to make sure that everybody's clear about, and I think I mentioned this on Dave, is that I tend to adopt the rule of 3, if you will, when I give out exams. So what I do is if I design the exam to be 50 minutes long, I'll take 50 minutes and I'll divide it by 3. And so 50 minutes divided by 3 is what, like 16 minutes and change and whatnot. So I better be able to complete the exam myself in 16 minutes and change. If not, I will change the exam so that that's possible. I am never one to give an exam that's 5 hours worth of material and only give you 50 minutes to solve it. I've never been that way before, and I'm not going to be that way now. Now, what you're going to see at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, October 7th, when you log into Blackboard, is what you see right here, okay? So 2 things are going to pop up. So if you go into the main body of course content, you're going to see 2 things pop up. The first is the timed exams. That's actually the exam itself. All the questions on the exam and the time of it is there. You will also see this part here that says upload work, okay? And the way this is going to work is you're going to take the exam from 10 to 11, and then once the exam's complete, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to, okay, now that the exam's over, get your CAM scanner out, scan the homework, submit it. And so I'm going to give you until noon to do that. And so the idea is I want you to spend that hour-long period actually taking the exam. I don't want you to feel rushed and, oh, not only do I have to take the exam, but I have to get CAM Scanner to work correctly and upload it, or I'm going to have problems. Now, there's going to be the time portion of the exam, and then you can upload the work after. That doesn't mean you can work on all of the work and whatnot. All that means is that you can do the exam in the 60 minutes and just upload it after. We used this system and statics when I gave an exam a couple weeks ago, and there was really no problems in terms of the technology was pretty kind. We didn't have any timing issues. I mean, I'm sure that there were people on the exam that felt like they didn't have a lot of time, but no more than they would have felt normally. And again, like I said, I'm not a time crunch guy. I don't do that on my exams. Now let's. Well, okay. Go ahead, Mr. Atkins, but I've got some more, but go ahead.
For a fact that Blackboard has sometimes the nasty happening of timing out on what you do on the exam here, you go into a quiz and you have to select the answers, you do the work, but at one point you time out and you're kicked out of the quiz and you can't get back in.
Well, I'm going to get to that. Don't worry. I know what you're talking about. And Mr. Romans had a question. Will Blackboard give our grade back immediately? No, it won't. I'm going to have to go in and grade it myself. And so that'll probably be my life on Thursday is grading the exams because I want to get the grades back to you as soon as possible. Now, Mr. Adkins' question, I think it's going to be answered here in a bit, but bear with me, okay? Let's talk about the operation and the approved materials. And so part of your question, Mr. Adkins, is going to be answered here. Another part's going to be answered later, okay? So first off, the exam is a forced completion model. So what that means is once you start the exam, you do have to finish it in one sitting, okay? It is a timed exam, and it's going to auto-submit once the timer has expired. So make sure you have your answers typed in if possible. The questions are going to appear all at once as opposed to one at a time, and so I do that so that you can have the opportunity to go back and review your responses before you submit. As for the approved materials, look, this is an online exam, so what I'm going to do is just be as easygoing as I can be. And so what I mean by that is this is an open book exam. It's open notes. I'm going to permit you to use any resource on Blackboard. And so what I mean by that is the lecture notes, the recordings, because those are listed on Blackboard, the homework solutions. My one red line is to not give or receive aid from another person, okay? And that includes things like, forums and Chegg and Reddit and all that stuff. Just take the exam on your own. And again, I've never been one to create like a Rubik's Cube on an exam and say, okay, solve it in 5 minutes. I mean, I think my exams are pretty fair. So if you give it your honest effort, I think you really are going to be fine. And I've been a pretty fair grader too. I'll talk about grading here in a second. Now, the other part of Mr. Adkins' question, I think, is going to be kind of answered here. So the exam is going to be comprised of 4 to 5 what I'll call conceptual questions, like they're shorter problems, like they're not going to be a lot of work. But then there's 3 like computational problems. So like 4 to 5 kind of shorter problems and 3 like what I'll call real problems. I don't want to tell you exactly what those problems are going to be because it's kind of part of the exam, but I think you could probably deduce kind of what type of problems you would expect. I mean, you all been in the class for the past 6 weeks or so, so I think you all probably have a good idea. Now, in response to Mr. Adkins' question, you all are going to submit a scanned PDF with the exam. So there's going to be the timed part of the exam. Also going to be a scanned PDF. I want you to type out an answer for every question, not just the conceptual ones, even the computational ones as well. And so, for example, if there's a problem that says compute the reaction here, I want you to just do me a favor and type out, R sub X equals whatever, or F sub X, or F sub Y equals this, or C sub Y equals this, M sub B equals this. You don't have to use like the equation builder. You can just type it out. You can just use your words, like make it fancy. But type out an answer for every question because it does help me out with grading. But also, I mean, you are going to submit your scratch work. You're going to have a PDF that you submit that shows your work. So that there's a little bit of redundancy there if for some reason something doesn't time out or anything. But I'll go ahead and tell you, I mean, I did the exact same model in statics, and I didn't have any issues at all with exam timeouts. But even the ones that weren't able to get typed in, I did have their work too. So we really didn't have any issues with people not getting their work in. Like I was able to find what everybody did. Before we talk about the topics, because I want to make sure there's time for that, are there any questions about any more questions about the logistics?
I have a quick question here. On the computation problems, I'm assuming we have a percentage of error on the answer. It's like a few decimal places off, or it's not.
I don't care about the rounding. Or stuff like the stuff you're talking about. I'm not worried about that. I mean, if you do it right and you get a 68.2 and I get a 68.19, that's fine. I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
Was that your question though?
Well, my question is calculations, since rounding off like a big number that has long decimal places might affect our final calculations, that kind of thing.
That's not going to be a big deal. That really isn't. I promise. I did I had the exact same issue or type of questions with statics, and that didn't affect anything at all. I'm going to get to Mr. Garrison's question here in a second, but let me talk to you a little bit about grading. So what I do with grading is this, and it's pretty laborious, but I think it's pretty fair. So what I do is first thing I'll do is I'll go through the problems, and if you get it right, you get it right. If you show your work and the answer didn't just magically appear out of thin air and you got the right answer, then you got it right. If you got it wrong, what I do is I have like a big spreadsheet set up for every single problem. And so I'll pick, student A, I'll say, okay, let's say student A missed number 2. And so I'll go through their calculations, and if I see a number that's wrong, I'll change that number on my spreadsheet. And then if I arrive at the same final answer that A did with that changed number, so I'm only going to take off for that number. So I'm pretty diligent in ensuring that I'm only taking off for the true mistakes. And I'm not saying, well, that number's wrong, that number's wrong, that number's wrong, and your final answer's wrong, so minus 180 points. Like I don't do that, okay? So I make sure that I'm pretty fair in ensuring how I grade. In Mr. Garris's question, you said on the exam 1 test, it will be a fill-in-the-blank type document, not a PDF. That's correct. So you're going to have like a series of questions pop up as a timed quiz on Blackboard, and then you'll just fill in the answer. But I mean, those questions will take work. Like you'll have to do calculations. And so for that hour, you'll do the exam, you'll take the test. And then once the time period's over, you'll submit your scanned PDF, like a few minutes later. I'm letting that close until noon. But really the idea is that you'll be given a little bit of time to scan it and submit it. And you won't have any issues with timing. Did that answer your question, Mr. Garrison? Okay, good deal. Let me talk about the topics on the exam. And I mean, there's not a lot here because I think you probably could reason this out on your own. And then I'll shut up and it's, the floor is yours. So what are the topics? So stability and determinacy. So that's where, we would classify a structure as unstable, statically determinate, statically indeterminate. If it's indeterminate, specify the degree of indeterminacy. Remember support reactions. So I want you to be able to compute support reactions for statically determinate structures. And so we're talking about concentrated forces, concentrated moments, distributed loads, pinned, roller, fixed supports, internal hinges, like, the full gamut of what we deal with in structural analysis. As for the remaining 2 topics on the exam, we're talking about plane truss analysis and shear and moment diagrams. So plane truss analysis, you got to be able to analyze a truss. Utilize either the method of joints or the method of sections, whichever you think is appropriate for a given problem. I'm usually not one to spell out means and methods. I don't say, do the problem this way. It's like, I want the answer. You figure out how to get it. Shear and moment diagrams, make sure you can determine the internal shears and moment at a point. You can formulate functions for shear and moment diagrams if necessary, and then draw the shear and moment diagrams for beams. And that is the first exam. That's pretty much it. So with that, I'm going to just sort of shut up for a bit. And I mean, the floor is really yours. So any questions that you have about, and I mean, we can ask about anything. It can be logistics, it can be topics, whatever. Floor is yours.
So on the question about plane truss analysis, so this be our determination on what's best to use, not what is requested by the question.
Yep, you can do it however you want. So I haven't even told you what the problem is. You know what I mean? So I might have a problem, and I might say, determine the forces in this member. And so you determine the forces in this member. You could use method of joints or method of sections. I might say determine the force in every member, and you could use method of joints or method of sections. You can do it however you want. I'm never one to tell you how to do the problem, because my philosophy is you're not going to be told how to do this when you get out of here. You're going to be a structural engineer, and you're going to be responsible for solving that truss. You solve it however way you want. My job is to provide you the tools to be able to solve it, and then your job is to look at the problem and ask yourself, is this a problem for a hammer or is this a problem for a wrench? I'll show you how to use the hammer and show you how to use the wrench, and then now you utilize those tools for the given challenge. But yeah, I try, and part of that is I want you to have the freedom to do it the way you want, as long as you do it correctly.
One more
Yeah,
question.
we got plenty of time, so.
Just refresh. So we're not going to. There's be no problems about deflection on the exam, since we just
No,
started the
we
topic.
have we haven't talked about that yet. No.
Would you be emailing us if the submission didn't go through? Because I know Blackboard has a history of submissions not.
I'll let you know. Oh, don't worry. I'll let you know. I mean, I'm going to be pretty much here the whole time, kind of watching it from a distance.
Okay, so we can email you if there's something wrong with the exam or.
Yeah, that's no problem. But at the same token, so this is something that happened during the statics exam. So I would have a problem, and I'm just making something up. It would be something like determine the resultant or determine the angle of this force or whatever. And you can just type out the answer like theta equals 12 degrees, or you can use that fancy equation builder in available in Blackboard to build the answer. You don't need to do that. Just type out the answer. Just type it out. You know what I mean? Don't make it difficult. Okay, two other comments. Let me see. Will you be available for questions or issues that arise during the exam? Absolutely. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to answer every question, but I did have one. There was a point on one of my last exams where there was a question, and I thought it was worthy enough that I would send an email to the class, so I did. I don't think it really affected the final grades very much for that exam, but somebody asked a question. I said, well, I'll just send an email to everybody just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Now, it's possible that you email me and I email you back and say, like, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. But if I can, I will. I'm not going to just, put on my headphones and watch YouTube videos for the hour. I tend to watch what's going on pretty expeditiously. I'm watching it like a hawk. I'm not sure that I actually knew that, Mr. Garrison. But then again, now that you say that, and now that I think about that, I think I did know that. But I also know that you can. I also know that you can turn that on and off. I believe. I think you can. Hopefully you'll find your equilibrium while taking it. If you get stressed out during the exam, just take a moment, relax, take a moment. I know, that's pretty bad. There you go. There you go.
So on the writing down the answer, so we'll have to type in the answer. That's it, correct? Not
for the timed exam, yes. And I mean, you'll have to show your work on the scratch paper if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get that, but I was just making sure because on Blackboard you're given multiple options on how you want the answer to be done. You got matching, multiple choice.
They're all good. That's a fair question. So they're all going to be set up as short answer. So you just type it out. I'll go ahead and tell you, there aren't going to be any like multiple choice type questions or anything like that. That's not. I don't do that. Here's all right. You actually made me think of something else. Okay, and this is something I do want to say. The problems are going to be weighted. Okay, so some problems are going to be worth more than others. That is something I do employ on my exams. And so the point I'm making is don't spend, 20 minutes on a problem that's worth 3 points. Don't do that to yourself. I did have some instances during the statics exam where, and maybe I didn't elucidate that very clearly at during the review session, but I had a similar format. There were some conceptual questions and some computational problems, and I keep referencing the statics exam because the format was very similar. A lot of the topics are kind of similar. I mean, this is structural analysis, and so we use a lot of statics. But what I found is that some of the problems that were short answer problems that were only worth 3 or 4 points, I got these like paragraph answers. It's like, no, just give me a couple words and move on. You don't need to spend this much time on this. So if there's a problem that's worth 25 points, you should be spending 25% of your time on that. So that you're strategizing that out. So time management is critical. But I would say that if we were in person, like whether we were in person or doing this online, I'd say the same thing. Because I do the same thing in both settings. Oh, there's got to be more questions than that. We got plenty of time.
What might happen if something happens during the exam, like if one of our internet goes out and we can't finish the exam, what will happen there?
Good question. So here would be a couple of points I would mention. Number one, I'm sitting here watching the chat, and I know that we've got a couple folks even just now that have dropped in and out, and that happens, and I've never really made a big deal out of it during class because I get it. It's a weird time. So if you're in and you miss class for a minute or two, that's no big deal. I think as I'm saying this right now, we had a student that just dropped out, and I'm pretty sure it was probably due to a poor internet connection. That happens. Okay. A couple points. First off, there's a big difference between streaming versus just taking the quiz. So whenever you're just taking a quiz, it's going to be less demanding on your internet service. So that's a point worth mentioning. But okay, what I would say to this, and I'm just being honest, if there's anybody in the class that feels that their internet is kind of they're worried about it, my advice would be to try to, if you can, come to campus. We have plenty of computer labs here, and the nice thing about the arrangement this semester with how we're delivering courses is that there's a lot of computers on campus that are available pretty all the time. We're not using the computer labs as much as we normally would. So, I can walk down the hall and there's, I think, 3 computer labs just on this floor and a couple on the second floor that probably don't have anybody in it. So, and plus there's the huddle stations. There's other, 4 computer labs. I forgot there are 4 computer labs on this floor. So there's plenty of options here on campus for you to come and take your exam. And so if you've got a shoddy internet connection and that's an issue, I would consider. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm saying you should, keep that as an option. That'd be point 1. Point 2, let's say that you're 30 minutes into the exam and it times out and we got to restart you. I can go in and delete your attempt and allow you to restart it. But keep in mind, that doesn't mean that you're starting from scratch. So let's say you've got one of the computational problems, right? You're going to have a whole page worth of work, right? And you're going to have the answer here at the bottom. So if I restart the exam, just go on and say the answer is da-da-da-da-da, and then there you go, that question's answered. So I don't think it's as much of a major time issue if we have to stop the exam halfway through and you have to restart it, because you'll have the problems done on your scratch paper. So I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. So those would sort of be my two answers. Is that if you're worried about your internet, I would try and come to campus or go somewhere where you think you're going to have adequate internet protection, and that you're going to be able to maintain social distancing and all that. And then two, if you time out, we can restart you. Now, if none of that's possible, if you really have, if this is going to be an issue, let me know, but let me know now. Don't tell me Wednesday after the exam is over, oh, Dr. Mike, I had all these issues. I mean, if you knew you were going to have them, tell me now. That's what I'm here for. And we can try and resolve those issues now before they happen. Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it did. But I'll make sure I inform you if Blackboard has a little moment there. I'll email you promptly and so we don't have a big fiasco.
No, I understand. Like I said, I mean, we didn't, and I'm not. I mean, my statics. I keep going to my statics exam, but it was just a couple weeks ago, and there are more people in statics than there are in this class. We didn't have a single issue, not one, with exam timing outs or anything like that. And I think part of the reason why is because of the way I separated everything. Part of it is just the timed exam, and then part of it is the upload of the PDF. And so because they're separate, if you're uploading a PDF and submitting answers, if you're uploading that file at the very last minute of the timer, I could see how you could have some timing out issues, because normally when you're uploading a PDF during the exam, you're not uploading it when you've got 20 minutes to spare. You're uploading it when you have 15 seconds to spare. And so the corresponding with the point at which the exam times out, it could be a recipe for disasters. That's why I separated it. So that's why there's the timed exam part and then the upload part in two separate components. And I think that sort of resolved a lot of those issues. Like I said, we didn't have a single problem in statics. Oh, there's got to be more questions than that. Any questions, though, about the content? We haven't had any questions about structural analysis, which either means that everybody feels good about that, which is I'm fine with that, or I hope that if there were questions about structural, the actual content, that you all have some prepared. And I mean, if we're good, I mean, we can end the review early, but I don't want to do that if there are lingering questions that people were afraid to ask. Don't hold back. This is your chance to ask whatever you want. Well, good deal. I mean, that's good. I mean, my theme for what we've been doing over the past 6 weeks and what we're going to be doing for the rest of the semester is that I truly don't believe that this topic is hard. I don't. I think it's doable. I think it all has its own way of checking itself. So, for instance, with a shear and moment diagram, when you draw a shear diagram, it has to start at 0 and it has to end at 0, because the sum of forces in the y direction equals 0. The positive area has to equal the negative area because the sum of moments is 0. And so that's all that is just a different way of expressing the equilibrium. And so the method, the theory of structures sort of has all these different ways of checking itself. And so I find that to make it not harder, because all you're doing is ensuring that the work that you did before was correct. And so I've never really found it to be a challenge. Well, I'm okay with that, and I'll go ahead and tell you that starting on Friday. So and that's a fair point. What we've been doing up until now. See, what we do in statics is we do kind of the stuff that we did in here, but we do it at a much higher level. And so we've really gotten into the nitty gritty here with shear and moment diagrams and trusses and all that stuff. So that the overall point is the stuff that we've done between the beginning of the semester and up until exam 1 is incredibly crucial, because we're going to take this stuff and we're going to do some really wild stuff with it for the next little bit. So, for example, deflections. Like, if you don't understand how to solve a truss, deflections is going to be impossible. If you don't understand how to draw shear and moment diagrams, deflections for beams are going to be impossible. And then we're going to take shear and moment diagrams, and we're going to develop the inverse of a shear and moment diagram, and that's what's called an influence line. And so with a shear and moment diagram, the loads sit still, but your point of interest moves, right? What is a shear and moment diagram? It plots the internal shears at different points, but the load sits still. Well, what happens when the load moves, but your point of interest remains still? That's called an influence line, and that's how you assess a structure due to a load that's moving. And you can probably guess, why would structural engineers care about structures subjected to loads that move? Well, bridges are subjected to loads that move, and so we have to develop tools to assess moving loads, but we can't do that until we have a really rock solid foundation on handling loads that don't move. And so that's kind of why the first little bit of this class does feel like partially like a review of statics, but almost sort of a repackaging of statics. Like, we take the stuff that matters to us, and only focus on that and expand upon it. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to give you all a couple more minutes. Are there any questions that you have about the format, the logistics, the content? Floor is yours. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any, and so I tell you what, I think. Oh, hold on. There we go. Are your equilibrium charts adequate for showing work? Are you talking about when I am doing reactions and I'll say put everything up on the left, everything down on the right? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, that's fine, but it depends on the problem. I mean, so for instance, if we're for a problem that's determining support reactions, if you provide me enough work to illustrate how you got from point A to point B, and let me be clear, I recognize it's an exam, and so I know that you're not going to be using, calligraphy style lettering, and it's not going to be, figures that would challenge, the artistic skills of Rembrandt. I get that it's a timed exam, and so as a result, I understand that you're going to be a bit more rushed than you would normally be on a homework assignment. And so I'm willing to see past, where there's like, you've got your equilibrium charts, and then you go, okay, I can take this and recognize, a given value. That's fine. I understand that. The thing that I don't want to see is I don't want to see just the beam and then reaction equals 25 kips. And I'm like, how did you get there? That's the one thing I don't want to see. As long as you're providing enough to show that you didn't just, conjure the answer out of, thin air, then I'm going to be fine with it. And look at it this way, okay? I am a big fan and a big proponent of assigning partial credit. I'm never one to just say it's wrong. okay? But in order to assign partial credit, I got to have something to go off of, okay? If there's nothing on your sheet, if it's absolutely blank and you have an answer and it's just wrong, I don't really have a way of saying where you went wrong. And so if it's like a 35-point question and you just have a single number and it's wrong, like what else do I do other than taking 35 points off? And I don't like doing that. I would prefer to have something to critique and go, oh, I see what you did. That's only like a 6-point mistake, or that's only a 4-point mistake. But if I don't have anything, then it makes it difficult for me to do that. And so as a more general response to your question, what I would say is give me something to go off of so that if there's an error, I have the means to take off a reasonable amount of points and not an excessive amount of points because I don't have anything to go off of.
So you're saying like if we do our work and we make an error near the very end, we would keep a majority of the points. Let's say you said 35-point problem, we would still keep 30 points, but we still lose 5 points in the end.
Generally, what I try and do is I do two things. Number one, I look at a given mistake and I try and assign a reasonable deduction that's proportional to how much it affects the problem and how much value that mistake is. You know, for example, I'm not going to assign as much of a mistake over a positive being a negative, like if you flipped a sign accidentally, or if you wrote down a 4 but you did the calculation using a 9. Like I don't, that's little stuff I'm going to take off, but I'm not going to, you know, make an issue there. But if you have a shear diagram that's you've drawn linearly and it was supposed to be constant or something like that, that's more. That's a conceptual issue, and that's going to be worth more. Okay, and so that's the first thing I do is I always try and ensure that the amount that I'm deducting is proportional to how much it affects the problem and how much it affects your understanding of the topic. That's the first thing I do. Second thing I do is I try and keep a log of the point deductions that I make, because if I have another student that makes a similar mistake or has you know a similar type of error, I don't want to take off 2 points for student 1 and then 6 points for student 2. I want to be fair across the board. So whatever mistake, you know, whatever deduction that I'm making, that it's fair because I'm doing that across the board. It's one of the reasons why when I grade exams, it takes me a long time to do it. Like my statics exam, I started grading it at like 8 o'clock in the morning. I was pretty much grading it all day. One of the things I did at the end in terms of grading, and there was a question about this, I believe, from Mr. Romans. What I'll do for the grade is this. I'll go ahead and tell you, I don't distribute the solution to the exam. I've never done that, and I'm not going to start. But what I will do is one of the reasons that I ask you to type out the answers is because when this is all said and done, I can download the entirety of the class's responses all as one big spreadsheet. And so what I can do is I can say, okay, let's take problem 5, and I'll just look at all the responses to problem 5. And so I can go in and say, that's right, that's right, that's right, that's right, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's right, that's wrong. And so I can go through it really quickly. And for the ones that got it right, I'll check their work and make sure that everything matches up. And for those of you wrong, I can go through and diagnose it. When that's all said and done, what I have is a massive spreadsheet that has all of my graded feedback. And so what I do is I take all that feedback, all that stuff that I wrote on my spreadsheet, and I have it spit it out into a PDF, like one-page sort of exam report, if you will, for every student. So like, let's say that you took my exam like we were in person. So if we took the exam in person, you know, exam and you'd give it back to me, I would grade it and I would give it back to you. So I would give you up like a marked up exam. Well, I can't give you back a marked up exam because we're doing the class online. But what I can do is give you a pretty detailed report that says, here's how you did on problem 1, here's how you did on problem 2, here's how you did on problem 3. And so hopefully if I get them graded by Thursday, and that's my goal, is to try and get them graded the next day, you should receive an email from me that shows, you know, problem 1, you got completely right. Problem 2, you got completely right. Problem 3, oh, you missed that value, so that was -3. Problem 4, you was fine. Problem 5, you had some issues, so I took off -10 points or whatever. And so you'll have a pretty detailed understanding of what was the grade you got and why you got it. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I thought it was relevant. And we'll also share statistics for how the class did. What I did in statics is I actually posted the video to Teams because I didn't want to take up too much time in class talking about, the exam. And so I was like, well, I'll just post it on Teams. Everybody can watch it there. And so that when we come back to class, we can just jump right into, trust deflections or, whatever topic is next in that class. How have grade distributions in your classes changed in your classes since the switch to online? I imagine that the resources shifted the bell, so to speak. That's a fair question. I'll say this: I don't really think that the bell has changed, and I also don't think that. Let me see if I can answers. I don't think I have enough data points to make a conclusion because we've only shifted, like we've only went online since March, and so I only have, I believe, 3 classes in the spring semester, or 3 exams in the spring semester, because I had 2 in one class and 1 in another, because one of the classes we had 2 exams, but I had done them before the spring break. I don't think that the bell changed itself. Like, if you were to plot the distribution, I don't think it changed very much. As for whether or not the students did better or worse, I actually don't really think there was much difference. I really don't. Again, a lot of the times the way I formulate exams is you either know it or you don't. And I've never really been one to say that well, well, now it's open book, so that's going to raise the point values, more. Usually, what happens is the students who do poorly, for instance, are the ones that don't show any work, or the ones that just don't answer any questions, or the ones that don't make an attempt, or are somewhat off the mark on their responses. And if that is the case, then that doesn't really change whether or not they're taking the test online or they're taking the test in person. And so if I was going to go out on a limb, I'd say that no, it actually really hasn't changed it all that much. Now, granted, again, I'm saying not too much data, but I don't think it's really changed all that much. Does ABET pay attention to that sort of data? Actually, yeah, they do. What we need, and I'm happy to go into that because I think it's a reasonable question. So what typically what we do from an accreditation standpoint is we try and ensure that our students are meeting, the prescribed outcomes that they need to meet, and so we as the department and the faculty members develop measures for those outcomes. And those measures can be things like, particular exam problems or particular lab exercises or particular design projects, whatever. And so, we pick the exercises that best fit the outcomes and that best measure the outcomes. And then we track that data from year to year to see, okay, are the students, okay, they're meeting this outcome, but maybe, there's this outcome we want to pay attention to a little more and whatnot. And so, we really want to be diligent in ensuring that we're measuring our outcomes, effectively. And so that's something that we've taken a lot of care in. I can tell you for sure within the department, sure that the measurements that we're taking and that our methodology for assessing the program is very well established. We take a lot of care to ensure that we do that. That's a really big deal to us. So I guess, yeah, the short answer is yes, but we also want to make sure that we're performing that measurement with specific target goals, and then how do we interpret that data in the end? That's what's really important. Any other questions before we call it? If the PE exam is the end all in terms of knowledge assessment, what is the need for accreditation in schools? I mean, we're a bit philosophical, but I'll say this. I mean, the assessment ensures, well, there's a couple things. One, the assessment ensures that we cover the topics that are typical within a given science. So in other words, you're going to Marshall and getting, an ABET accredited degree. That accreditation, that's fine. That accreditation ensures that if you went to another school, if you went to a different school that had a similar accreditation, that you were getting comparable education. So that's one of the things that ABET assessment ensures. It also ensures that you're going to be adequately prepared for these licensing exams to come. I mean, you're spending money to come here, so are you getting your money's worth? So that's kind of what it's about, in my opinion. That and society. I mean, we're designing buildings and bridges that can fall down and kill people if we don't design them properly. So, yeah, this exam review went well beyond moment diagrams. But I mean, maybe I don't. I'd say it's pro profession. That'd be the best way of saying it. We got 3 more minutes, though. Any questions about structural analysis? Well, I can say this. Y'all have fantastic on your homeworks. You've been engaged. You've been invested in learning this, and so I'm confident you all will do fine on the exam. I will be there watching like a hawk on Wednesday, and we'll see you in class again on Friday. Where can we see attendance grades? If you go to the Grade Center in Blackboard, they're all there. They're along with the homework. It's either on the top before the homework grades start, or at the bottom with the summary of everything else. But it's in the Grade Center on Blackboard. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call it because I think our questions are winding down. If you need anything, if you got any questions, anything you can think of, let me know. And if it's anything super substantive, I'll post something to Teams so that everybody, has the feedback. That's all I have, everybody. I will see you all in class on Friday. Best of luck on your exam on Wednesday.